Hey everybody, it's Dan, your friendly fishmonger from dansfish.com, and today I want to talk about chocolate. Who doesn't like chocolate, but specifically chocolate gouramis. Chocolate gouramis are awesome. Let's take a look. Alright, so here they are. Let's get this party started. And the way I want to start this party is by feeding them some flake food. I hear pretty consistently that chocolate gouramis need to be fed live food only, or live and frozen foods, but I just wanted to show this because I feed mine flake foods and pellet foods every day, and they eat it well. I also feed live foods and frozen foods to supplement the diet, but I don't think people should shy away from this fish for fear that they won't eat well on live food and frozen food. Now, when they're first acquired, that's true. It takes a little training to get them to eat frozen foods. Flake foods and pellets and things. But with just a little bit of training, then they will. And these guys do it all the time. So just wanted to clear that up. Now, there is something about feeding them which should be made note of, and that is these are micro-predators. They are very slow fish. They rely on stealth, not speed. So they are colored basically and patterned to kind of look like a dead leaf in the water or something like that. And they cruise around slowly and pick off little tiny crustaceans and insects and worms and things like that they find in the system, so where they live. So they eat very slowly and deliberately, and they're not extraordinarily fast swimmers or anything like that. So they can easily be outcompeted by quick fish. So these are a wonderful community fish. They're peaceful. They don't bother anyone. You can keep them in big groups, and they do great. You can keep them with other species, and they do great, with the caveat that the other species you're keeping them with should not be super fast feeders because they can get outcompeted for food easily. They are in with a few guppies in this aquarium, and I do that because I find freshly imported fish sometimes need, they're the new kid on campus and they need someone to show them around and how things are done. And the guppies are out and about and they're not shy and they eat everything, and that kind of helps the gouramis learn that it's safe here and here's what we eat and all that stuff. So I do put a few guppies in there, but this is a 75-gallon aquarium and there aren't very many guppies in here. There might be a dozen or so in this size tank. So they would not do well in this aquarium if it was stocked crammed full of guppies. But since it's mostly chocolate gouramis with just a few guppies, everything's fine. So just keep that kind of thing in mind when you're planning on getting this fish. The other thing about these guys is, as you noticed when I dropped the food in, both when we were looking at the front and now when we're looking through the submerged lens, they didn't run away. These aren't like a shy, timid fish, and you'll hear all the time that they are, and that people are like, yeah, you'll never see them and all this stuff. And I beg to differ. I think the key is get a group of them. If you get them in groups, they don't school really or anything like that, but they do cue off each other, and they'll do really well and be out and about, and you'll enjoy them a lot more if you get a group of them as opposed to one that just, gets scared and hangs out in a corner or something like that. Every time I've kept them in groups, and they've always been out and about and not shy or anything like that once they settled in. So I think that they're a great community fish and that they're a nice centerpiece fish and all that in a group, provided you don't put them with fish that will outcompete them at feeding time. They don't like zipping around like Danios and barbs and stuff. They don't like fish that are constantly in their face, things like that. So, yeah. But if that's taken into consideration, you'll do great with these. Let's see here. One thing I would like to point out, though, is that adequate cover helps. So there's a lot of pipes in here. There's coconut huts in there. There's a flower pot back in the back and lots of hiding places. They don't ever really use them, but they're there. And the fact that they're there makes them feel comfortable. So if you have a tank with some plants or some driftwood or some decorations, things like that in it, that will really help these guys settle in. And as long as that's around and they feel like they could hide if they need to, then they almost never do. So one key to keeping them out and about is provide plenty of cover for them. Temperature-wise, I've always kept them in the mid-70s, maybe the upper 70s on a hot day. I've read that the temperature range can go up to the mid-80s. I've never tried that, but they tend to, the literature says they have a pretty wide temperature range, and that makes sense because they have a wide range geographically. They come from Malaysia, Sumatra, Borneo, Indonesia, and Singapore. So they're a very widespread species, so that does make me think that they could take, oh, look at the red face on that girl right there out front. That's awesome. At least I think it's a girl. I really can't sex these. Wow, that was pretty. Every now and then, one will fire up and I'll notice a jaw full of eggs. So they are breeding in here. I'm not fishing them out and raising the babies or anything like that, but they do look like they breed quite easily because there's almost always one female in there holding. Anyway, they have a wide range, so temperature seems to be something that they can take quite a range on. Again, though, I've never tried it, so I've just read it. They also come from different environments, mostly black water, really acidic, kind of lots of vegetable matter decaying in the environment kind of things, low pH, low hardness. But they do also come from clear water habitats, so they are somewhat adaptable. They're often very delicate when they're first imported, and I think all of them are imported. I don't know of any place that's captive breeding them on a large scale. So they are fairly delicate, but once they get through that, if they're nursed through that stage, then in my experience, they've been rock solid. I've had one outbreak of ick in all the time I've kept this species, and I've kept several hundred of them, and they recovered from that in a few days. So that's to me, that says this is a pretty hardy fish. Again, once it's acclimated. One neat thing about these are most anabantoids, that's like bettas and gouramis and things like that. In most of them, it is the male that carries the eggs in its mouth because they're a mouth-brooding fish. So they'll spawn, and one of the parents will hold the eggs in their mouth until they hatch and they're free swimming. Then they spit them out, and at that point, the babies are really well developed and can take baby brine shrimp right away. But in this species, it's the female that carries the eggs. So I don't know, it's interesting to think what is it about them that made them go that way when in all of the other ones it's the male that carries the eggs. I don't know, but it's interesting to think about. One thing that I should mention, they have very small mouths, which is another reason they feed slowly. When you first put the flake food in, their mouth is so small they almost can't eat it. They have to wait till it gets a little softened, and then they can get it in their mouth. Their mouth's that small. So they can be kept with really, really small nanofish because they're not going to bother them. They're not fast, and their mouth is so tiny that I would be surprised if they could eat them or bother them in any way. So it's a great stocking mate for, say, small rasboras, Borara species, rosy loaches I think would do really well with these guys. Not too many though. Rosy loaches are pretty quick little fish, really active little fish. But anyway, keep that in mind. You don't have to stock them with fish that are their own size. You could stock them with species that are a lot smaller. And the chocolate gouramis are going to top out at about 2 inches. They don't get super big. So anyway, that's the chocolate gourami. Let's go to the amazing outro. So there you have it. Chocolate gouramis, awesome little fish, peaceful, really unique, bold patterns, and I just kind of like them. They're real chill, interesting fish. So anyway, hope you like that. If you do, if you would consider subscribing, liking, sharing, hitting notification bells, all that schmazz, that would be wonderful. And until next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.